Well, hello there, boys and girls. This is Caleb Jones, and this is the Sovereign CEO podcast. We talk about location-independent income through your own location-independent business, moving to a less bad country, or at least setting up an international backup plan, and doing all these things for very little money. Today, I want to talk to you stand and fight guys. You know who you are. Recently, let me back up. I have already done a fully fleshed out YouTube video responding to, but we have to stand and fight. We can't leave the United States, Canada, Europe. We have to stand and fight the wokesters, and fight the feminists. We have to fight to take back our country. Rah, rah. Okay. I did an entire video demonstrating why that is literally stupid. It is a stupid, hyper irrational position that makes no sense to the real world. You can go watch that video at my YouTube channel. This is a little different aspect of this. This is another reason. And I do mention this reason in that video, but I'm going to go into more detail about this. Because I recently had a newsletter. I have those of you who don't know, I have an email newsletter. It goes out every week. We have actually 2 email newsletters if you're on my mailing list. And if you want that newsletter, it's free. You can go to calebjones.com and you can download the Location Independence Toolkit for free, and that puts you on the mailing list. You get that newsletter. It's every Thursday. It's a Q&A newsletter. People write in questions, and I answer them. Actually, that is the Sovereign CEO version of the newsletter. There's 2 versions. If you want the Alpha Male 2.0 version, which also includes not just business questions, but woman questions, dating questions, things like that, you can go to alphamale20.com and subscribe over there. Download the free toolkit there, and that puts you on the list. So I have 2 versions of that newsletter. So anyway, a guy wrote in, and maybe by the time this podcast comes out, that newsletter will already have been out. Not sure. But a guy wrote in, he was very polite and very earnest, and he was one of these stand and fight guys. And he said, look, I'm a stand and fight guy. I'm a right-wing, proud conservative, fighting the wokesters and fighting the good fight and voting for Trump and all that bullshit. And he said, yes, I've watched your YouTube video. I understand your points. You make good points. So at least he was rational enough to acknowledge this. He goes, but here's the thing. He goes, I have kids. And that means I'm going to have grandkids someday. And he goes, Caleb, I know you have kids. He goes, and I know your kids don't live inside the country, or one doesn't, or one does, or they're moving out. So I realize this doesn't matter to you specifically, but for the rest of us who have children who are going to stay in the United States and possibly have grandkids in the United States, despite everything you said in that video, doesn't it bother you that you just, if you don't make an effort to make the country better for your children and your grandchildren, doesn't that at least bother you? And he followed up the letter saying, look, I'm not saying this to attack you. I really want your opinion on this. How do you feel about that emotionally? And this is an expansion of what I told him. I said, the challenge with that question is that it assumes there is something you can do to turn America around. Now, I'm going to say, for the rest of this podcast, I'm going to say America, but this applies to those of you who are in Canada, UK, Australia, Western Europe. This is mostly an American thing because most of you, based on my experience with you guys, my audience, people I meet in my audience, people I talk to in my audience, you Canadians, Europeans, Australians, you have a much better pulse on how badly your countries are doing, and you're not addicted as much. Some of you are, but not as much to, if we vote for this one guy, he'll turn it around. You're not quite as irrational as the Trump worshipers of the United States. Some of you are, but a lot of you aren't. I've used Germans as a good example where throughout the last 10 years, 15 years for me, when I've talked about the Western world is collapsing, if I said to these German people in Germany, Germany is collapsing for the past 15 years, they go, yeah. Oh yeah, we're fucked. Oh yeah, our country's fucked. Oh yeah. They're not even, there's no argument at all. They're like, oh yeah, fuck Germany. Yeah. These are normal everyday Germans. Whereas prior to 2020, and certainly prior to 2016, when I said America was collapsing, Americans said, what do you mean? Why do you say that? Everything's great. So, and I talked about that, why, Americans look out their window and say, well, everything looks fine to me. America must be doing fine. They don't look at any of the economic data. They don't look at any of this stuff. So anyway, so other cultures other Western cultures outside the United States tend to be less irrational about this. There's something unique about American conservatism where it's like, no, we have to stand and fight, vote for Trump, and so it's just part of that culture. So, where was I going with this? So, here's the problem with that question. So, I'm going to say America, but this may apply to people outside America if you have this feeling of, I have to save the UK, I have to save Canada, I have to save Australia, I have to save Germany. There are less of you, but this applies to you too if you feel this way about your current collapsing, quasi-authoritarian, quasi-socialist, corrupt, going down the tubes, high-tax country. The question, what about your kids? What about my kids? What about my grandkids? The incorrect assumption of that question is that there is something you can do to turn America around in the year 2023. And as I've shown repeatedly for years at my blogs in particular, I have a video coming up at some point when I get settled here in Dubai. I'll do a deep dive on this. It is not mathematically possible or culturally possible to save, in your opinion, when I say save, your right-wing conservative definition of save, to save the United States of America in the year 2023. As I have said many times, I've given a lot of analysis about this, your window of opportunity for saving the United States, you Americans, was ended around the late 1990s. In the 90s, there are things you could have done to save America. You could have. That's why, unlike now, I was politically active back in the 1990s. I was a big Ross Perot guy back in the 1990s because I saw, based on the data, we could turn the country around back in the 1990s. So it made sense at that time to try to vote for someone who could turn around. And Ross Perot could have actually done that. Not because Ross Perot was a great guy. A lot of things about Ross Perot I didn't like. But he had the ability to turn around, A, as president, and B, it was possible to turn it around back in 1992, 1996. You could have done that. There are things you could have done in 1992, 96 to turn America around. Economically, culturally, whatever, okay? Is that true today? No, it's not. It's not possible anymore. It is mathematically possible in terms of fiscal economics. There's no law you can pass. There are no reforms you can make. If certainly the president can't do these, even if it was like Emperor of the United States, you cannot, sorry, I'm stumbling over my words. There's no law or policy or set of laws or set of policies you can enact in the United States that will financially turn the United States around. It has too much debt. The bad guys are way too entrenched. Just the CIA alone. Not to mention the left-wingers, not to mention the bad right-wingers. Not to mention the fact that modern-day right-wingers are also for a big government, and this is true as of George W. Bush. I've said this many times. I saw in the early 2000s, this is when I realized America was fucked. When I saw George W. Bush's fiscal budget for 2003 or 2004, it was an what was it? I forget. Billions, trillions of dollars in growth in government. I mean, growth, big government on steroids. And over 80% of the growth that he proposed for the new budget, this is in the conservative Republicans who are supposed to small government now, over 80% of that had nothing to do with the war in Iraq or war on terror. Nothing to do with it. It was just socialism. And all the right-wing conservatives in the United States said, yay, what a great president. I said, what? I think you guys are for small government. And like, no, we're not. Fuck you. So that's when I knew that plus a bunch of other things on the left side. On the left side, I saw daycare centers being built in next to white suburban high schools. So the white suburban girls getting pregnant could have daycare centers for their babies. I said, there's no turning this around. Once you give someone something, you can't turn it back around. I said, once the conservatives have lost their mind, and they did, this is the way it goes. So there's no way to do this. There's also no way to do this culturally. I've mentioned this many times. I've shown links on my blogs for this stuff. Most right-wing conservative Republicans in the United States, Republicans, are for more gun control. Republicans, not Democrats, not left-wingers, Republicans. Most Republicans think that the United States economy should be more, quote, fair like Sweden. Republicans. Most Republicans think more things need to be done by the government to fight global climate change. Republicans. So Republicans are now left-wingers. As I've said, and I said this 10 plus years ago, modern day right-wing conservatives are just another version of the left. Trump supporters love Bernie Sanders shit. When Bernie Sanders starts talking about his socialist crap, Trump supporters eat that shit. They love it. Most Trump supporters support free, quote-unquote, free healthcare. Universal basic income. Most Trump supporters support this shit. You see my point? There is nothing you can do to magically change the culture or magically change the hard economic numbers to save the United States today in the 2020s. There's nothing you can do. So when you say to me, well, what about our kids? What are you going to do to save your kids? How are you staying in the United States, which is going to get worse and worse and worse every year, regardless of who you vote for? How is that going to help your kids live in a better country once you're dead? And this guy was saying, I'm going to die someday and I'll have my kids. My kids will be there and alone, and my grandkids. And how are you going to help them? Tell me exactly, and I've said this many times, tell me exactly, you stand and fight guys, how voting, pressing a Chad for Donald Trump once every 4 years. By the way, you guys tried that in 2020. What happened? Oops. I'm not even allowed on YouTube to say what happened. You know what happened. So did that work last time you voted for Trump? Oops. No, it didn't. So how is voting, not electing, voting for Donald Trump every 4 years, or screaming at feminists and wokesters on Twitter, going to turn around the hard economics of the United States, or the zeitgeist, the current cultural big government quasi-socialist zeitgeist of the United States, including most people you would call conservatives? How does that help? Tell me exactly. Well, Trump could win, Caleb. Trump was president for 4 years. How did he make America great during those 4 years? Again, I talk about, you can go watch my video on my Sovereign CEO channel where I analyze what Trump did before the pandemic. He was not only a huge deficit hawk in terms of deficit spending, he jacked up the deficit and debt more than any other president, not just in American history, but in world history. He's one of the biggest government presidents in world history before the pandemic. How did that make America great again? Did he build the wall? Did he bring the manufacturing jobs back? Did he do anything? No. So you have already voted for him twice, and you successfully elected him once for 4 years. Did any of that work? Did any of that make America great again? Did any of that make America less woke? No, it didn't. I've had all this data, Now, I understand this bothers you when I say this. This bothers you emotionally, and some of you are already on your keyboard saying, but Caleb, give me the facts and data. When I pointed out the Barbie movie, how popular Barbie movie was, and I said, you guys voted for Trump, and we're still getting Barbie movie, and that just cost $1 billion. And now wokeism is now mainstream. It's going to get more woke every year, just like I said it would in 2016. There was a commenter on that video that actually said, well, there were less woke movies when Trump was president. You didn't have movies like Barbie. I said, are you kidding? And I literally listed off 7 or 8 extreme left-wing woke movies that came out under Trump. You guys are being irrational about this. Now, the guy who asked this question, I'm addressing those of you who are not as psycho-rational, like you think if Trump becomes president, he'll magically wave them on and fix everything. Those guys are hopeless. There's no convincing those people because they're irrational and they want to be irrational. They're just as irrational as modern-day woke left-wingers. I've said many times, the United States, one of the main reasons the United States is collapsing is the entire culture is dominated by 2 completely psychotic groups of people, the woke left and the Trump right, neither of which want to look at these problems objectively. They don't want to. And when you give them objective facts, they just call you names. Right. But there's a percentage of you stand and fight right-wing conservative Christian guys. Maybe you are or aren't a Christian, I don't know, but you're right-wing conservative values and okay. There's a percentage of you who are not totally insane, and you're like this guy who asked the question in my newsletter. Well, what about my kids? I have a brother. I have many brothers. I have one brother who is a big right-wing Trump guy. And he's used the same bullshit excuse. But Caleb, I have kids. Okay, what are you going to do to make America better, demonstratively, numerically, scientifically, objectively better, in terms of you changing the culture, good luck, or you changing the hard economics numbers of the American government, the largest bankrupt corporation in the history of the universe, okay? History of the known world, right? What are you going to do? How is screaming at people on Facebook, screaming at left-wing people on Facebook, going to turn the country around? And if you say voting for Trump, you did that, it didn't work. If you say electing, we gotta vote for Trump again, you did that twice. It didn't work. So we've already gone your way, still didn't work, as I told you it wouldn't work. Now, and I said this in the response in my newsletter. If it was possible to save the U.S., if this was 1992, and it was actually numerically possible, objectively possible to retain the culture, turn the culture around, change the economics around the tax structure, the debt structure, the foreign policy, was actually able to change these things to literally avert disaster in the United States, this would be a very different conversation. My attitude about this would be very, very different. Would Caleb, would you still have left the country? Depends on how much taxes the country was charging me. I didn't leave the United States because it was collapsing. That's like reason number 6. Reason number 1 was taxes. So that's why I left. If America was doing fine, or if this was 1992 and it was possible to turn America around, but the tax rates were still very high, I still would have left. But I'd have a very different attitude about if you want to stay and fight, I'd be like, hey, that's a good point. As long as you're going to do this, okay, hey, that's a really good point. But I'm not saying that today because it's not possible. And if you want to prove me wrong on this, for those few of you stand and fight guys who are rational and objective, it's a very small percentage of you. But that's the percentage I'm trying to talk to here in this podcast. Those of you who are rational objective in terms of the stand and fight stuff, tell me with real specifics how you're going to turn around the economics of the United States government and the United States economy and or the culture. Saying voting for Trump that's not a specific. That's a wide open general thing, and you already did that, didn't work. Tell me exactly with numbers and facts and data how you're going to do this. How conservatives in the U.S. could do whatever. I'm not going to get a single comment with actual numbers or facts. I know I'm not. I'm just not. I'm not going to get a single email with numbers. I'm going to get emotions. Okay? I'm going to get, I'm going to get a bunch of bullshit. I'm definitely going to get that. But I'm not going to get, because as I discovered in around 2018, most Trump supporters know they're being irrational. So this is anything about Trump supporters. In 2016, when they were screaming, build a wall, make America great again, I said, that's not going to happen. What the fuck, you guys? Shut the fuck up. I thought they were just misguided or stupid. That actually wasn't the case. By the time 2018 rolled around, and I showed on my blogs, well, Trump didn't build a wall, didn't do shit, didn't do this, he bombed Syria for no reason, he's doing all the same shit that Bush and Obama did, pretty much the same shit. What do you got to say for it now? A lot of those guys said, well, yeah, I mean, we know he's not going to make America great again. We just like saying that because it makes left-wingers angry. And that is actually the actual MO of the Trump supporter. And I'm not the first person to observe this. Ben Shapiro has talked about this. He's right. Most Trump supporters say, build a wall, make America great again, get Trump in there, lock her up, or whatever new statements they're going to make up. Not because they really believe it, but because they know it pisses off the left, and that's all they have left. As I've said many times, the right was defeated over 10 years ago. They lost the culture war over 10 years ago. You guys soundly lost. It's just now the left won a long time ago, and now they're just growing in the economy and in the culture. You're fighting a war that you already lost. A lot of right-wingers know this. They don't want to admit this, but they know that. So all they have left is pissing off the left and making them angry. And they know supporting Trump makes left-wingers really fucking mad, and that's the thing they love the most. And if you don't believe me, look at all the Trump supporters who, just jerk off on their keyboards with that Young Turks election night video. They just can't get enough of that video when Turks is just shocked that Trump is winning, and oh my God, they just can't get enough of that because they love left-wingers getting angry, but they know in their hearts deep down, they don't talk about it, they don't say it, but they know deep down they're fucked. There's nothing to do with the United States. So when they say, I'm going to stand and fight, what most of these people are actually saying is, I'm going to stay in America to keep pissing off the left because I'm so angry that they destroyed, quote, my country. They don't really mean they're going to stand and fight because you can't fight. You already lost the war. There's nothing you can do. And if there was something you could do, again, this would be a very different conversation. I'd be objective about this. That's why when a left-winger, and this doesn't happen very often, but when a left-winger, an American left-winger, real hardcore left-winger, says, I want to stay in America because I want to do this and this and this, I want to change these things. I don't argue with that person. He already won. So I'm like, all right, you want to make America more left? Okay. You can actually pull that off. That's a doable goal. That's actually what will happen. But here's the thing about left-wingers. It's the opposite of the Trump supporters. You don't have to do anything. If you're a left-wing American, you don't have to do anything. Just sit back and relax, and it'll get more left every year. You don't have to do a goddamn thing. Sure, I guess there's things you do to accelerate that. Oh, I guess. Which I kind of think would be good. It would accelerate the collapse of the U.S. because nothing good will happen to Americans until America collapses. There's a term for that theory where you vote for the worst people You go ahead and vote for Biden and Hillary Clinton knowing that they're worse to make the collapse happen faster so that when you reach rock bottom, then maybe you'll get some good things. Again, I don't care. I'm not political because I don't care because it doesn't matter to me anymore. I don't live in the United States anymore. So that's why the conversation is different. And by the way, this is not about me being upset or making fun of you or saying, haha, I was right. It's not about any of that stuff. It really isn't. It's about presenting you with facts, which is my role here. My job here at Sovereign CEO and at Alpha Male 2.0 is to get, and this has always been my job, starting way back in 2009 when I started as an online presence on the internet, is to report to you the facts, even if they bother you and emotionally piss you off. For this, it's about America collapsing. From Alpha Male 2.0 content, it's about long-term monogamy not working, and showing you the data and showing you the facts, and you get mad and call me names and make a bunch of bullshit excuses, but you know in your heart the facts are correct because you can't provide any counterfacts to prove me wrong. You have to live your life based on reality, objective reality. Aristotle said A is A. A is not B because you don't like A. You can't say A, I don't like A, so A is C. 2 plus 2 equals 4. You can't say 2 plus 2 equals 5 because 4 bothers you emotionally. You have to acknowledge, even if you hate the number 4, that 2 plus 2 equals 4 and live your life accordingly. Then you'll be happier and you'll be long-term safer. Here's a thought for those who worry about your kids. You could do what I did. You could adopt a more international lifestyle or a 5 flags lifestyle. 5 flags is pretty complex, maybe just international, maybe just a plan B, a backup plan. And you could encourage your children subtly to do the same thing. I never told my kids, move out of the United States. I never did this. When they asked about it, then I would get into it with, I said, oh, you want to move to Sweden? Whatever. My daughter wanted to move to Sweden at one point. But you can do what I did. My son moved out of the United States of his own accord. I never told him to leave. Ever, never, ever. He moved out of the United States before I did. Smart, because he's smart. He sees the writing on the wall like I do. My daughter is in the United States, but she's actively working on moving out with her boyfriend. It's going to take another year or two. She's a lot younger than my son. There's like a 6-year age difference. And I never said you need to move to the United States, but they saw what I did and they saw what a great time I'm having and how, I'm not paying as much taxes and all those things. You can encourage your kids to build a better life somewhere outside the United States. Now, again, if you're a hardcore, right-wing, dyed-in-the-wool, America, fuck yeah, that's very emotionally difficult for you, and I understand that. But what you're dealing with here is not facts, it's emotions. That's the bottom line. We're not dealing with, if we do certain things, we can make America great again, because you can't. What we're dealing with is, this would emotionally bother me if I admitted to myself America is fucked and I left the country. This would bother me a lot. That's what we're dealing with. So your job, if you're willing to stand and fight, guys, and you have some level of objectivity and rationality, is to overcome those feelings so you can make a better life for yourself and, yes, a better life for your kids. But Caleb, what if my kids don't leave? Over my Alpha Male 2.0 content, when I talk about parenting, I talk about this in my books. You can't make your grown kids do anything. If they're under 18, you can make them do whatever you want. Once they're 18, they can do whatever the fuck they want. And that's up to them. If they decide to stay on a sinking ship, that's their deal. I am sad, that's the way it goes. I have other videos talk about this. What if my mom and my dad and my cousin, my brother? What if my daughter, chooses to stay in the United States for the rest of her life and go down with the ship? That will suck, but that's her decision. She's a grown woman. And part of being a parent is letting go, especially if you're an Alpha Male 2.0 parent. We're not talking about that right now, but those of you who follow my other content. Letting go, outcome independent, letting your kids do what they want once they're 18. Under 18, no. Over 18, they do what they want. It's their life because they're adults. And you can certainly recommend whatever you want. Best way to do it is live by example. That's what I do. So that's it. Hope that helps. Wish I had something more compelling, not more compelling, but something more positive. But this is really a decision you have to make. Or you could stay on Twitter and keep screaming at left-wingers because you like making left-wingers angry and saying, I'm going to vote for Trump, fuck you. And the left-wingers get mad. You go, yay, they're mad. And your country gets worse and worse and worse every year until it finally collapses and you're still there and I'm not. Choice is yours.